Everybody and their mother is waiting for the finale of Stranger Things to come out at the end of December, and it feels like an eternity away, so let's talk about the crazy mid-finale that was episode 4. There had been theories of Will being able to use powers for the longest time, and now he's finally able to hold his weight as one of the main characters. Now, on the surface, it may seem like Will's psychic powers weren't properly set up, but if you actually track Will's story from season 1, his awakening is not a last-minute retcon. From day one, he was treated like Vecna's first experiment, the original human vessel wired into the Upside Down. He's kind of like one the same way Henry Creel was the first experiment. And now that we're at the final season, we can see how all this has been building up to this moment. If we look back to seasons 1 and 2, we can see how the hive mind was integrating into Will and using him, and seasons 3 and 4, where he kind of had this spidey sense that made his neck crawl. And now that we're at season 5, it's finally when Will accepts his place in all the madness. So in this video, I want to go season by season and look back at all the foreshadowing of Will's awakening and even see how the scenes feel different now that we know more about Vecna. So let's start at the beginning where Will's powers started, and we have to go all the way back to the night he disappears in season 1, episode 1. The series opens by showing us exactly what the Demogorgon does to people in Hawkins' lab. It massacres them, it tears through people, but when it chases Will, and he bikes home in a panic and runs into the shed, instead of getting ripped apart like everyone else or taken into the Upside Down to get eaten, he's left alive. This was a huge mystery to us in season 1. Some people thought it was plot armor because, he's one of the main kids. But now that we know Vecna himself chose Will to shape him to become one of his vessels, it all makes sense now. He was selected for a very special role and as the first experiment for Vecna's plan to take over humanity. And in the season 1 finale, when Joyce and Hopper finally find Will, we see him pinned to the wall with the organic tube shoved down his throat. And at the time, we didn't really know why he was being pumped with all this upside down fluid. But now in season 5, we basically know that Vecna was pumping particles of like the mind flare and the hive mind into Will and linking his nervous system to it. And of course, we knew in later seasons that Will was connected to the hive mind because of leftover fluid from the Upside Down, but we didn't know that Vecna himself was intentionally connecting children as vessels to his mind and also the hive mind. And again, now that we know that Will has powers of some sort, back in season 1, we had already seen that Will's mind was able to receive information through Vecna's hive mind. And in the epilogue, when Will goes to the bathroom and he leans over the sink and coughs up that tadpole Demogorgon, for a split second, his vision flips into the upside down version of the room. Again, I think this was foreshadowing Will's ability to unintentionally tap into the upside down, a power that I think we're going to see explored later on with Holly. Because if Will can access the upside down through his connection to the hive mind, maybe they can access a portal into the real world the way that Demogorgons can tear open rifts to get to and from the upside down and the real world. In season 2, when Will's out trick-or-treating with the boys in their Ghostbusters outfit, he's yanked into a vision again. And this time, he's looking up at the gigantic shadow monster, and now we know which was the Mind Flayer. And this is when the Mind Flayer properly moved into Will's body. And after this, his visions become extremely specific. He knows where the tunnels are and how they branch. He can feel when they're being burned, like his connection to the hive mind was at its strongest. Back in the lab, Dr. Owens called the experiences now memories, which were like memories of things happening somewhere else in real time, and they were literally using him as a radar, guiding soldiers through the tunnels based on what he sees. Again, this is very similar to the way that Will was experiencing the visions in season 5, because now that Vecna was closer, he was able to still tap into the hive mind ability he had in season 2. And at the end of the season, they're able to use heat to get the mind flare, like physical fluid, out of Will's body. His voice is like switching in between his own and the mind flare, showing how powerful of a connection they had inside Will's mind where he couldn't even control his own body. But even though they expelled the physical upside down fluid or whatever out of Will's body, we can see in the later seasons he still has the hive mind like carved into his mind, and he couldn't ever properly cut off the connection because it was always psychic, because it was always Vecna's power, not just the physical upside down fluid. And in season 3, there's no more mind flare possessions anymore, but every time that they're close, Will does that neck grabbing thing, which means there's something going on in the upside down. And in season 5, we get to see this explored more as Robin describes it kind of like a radar where he can detect where the Demogorgons are and where Vecna is. Now in season 4, Will had a smaller part in the story. It was focused more on Eleven and Max, and most of his storyline was more about his personal relationships and not more of the supernatural side. But in the last scene with all like the black snow falling, it was another reconfirmation that Will's mind is personally connected to Vecna specifically and not just the Mind Flare in general. And of course, season 5 starts off with the scene of Vecna all the way back then being the one who found Will in the Upside Down and feeding him all that disgusting fluid down his throat. And by this time, Will has been a victim, a spy, and a radar by using his powers. And now we can see that all of this was deliberate, that Vecna all the way back then had planned to do beautiful things together. And at the Mac Z, or the Big Mac, when all the Demogorgons are breaking into the facility and slaughtering people, and there's a bunch of kids that they have to protect, Will finally is able to use psychic powers. He can see where all his friends are all across Hawkins because he's able to help Lucas, who's down in a tunnel, and even Robin, who's farther away from them, because he's able to see through the perspective of the Demogorgons. And he kills the Demogorgons poetically in the same way that Vecna was killing the 4 teenagers in season 4 by that disgusting body snapping method. And the fact that he isn't just controlling them through their minds, but he's actually using psychic powers, because we see him levitate one in midair, the one that's about to attack Mike and the children. It's showing that Will is actually using psychic powers of some sort and not just mind control. But Will didn't just awaken psychic powers like he's the next 11 or anything like that. He can only use powers related to the Upside Down and in through the hive mind because his connection is directly tied to Vecna. He is basically channeling Vecna's powers, which means that he cannot, let's say, move the helicopter or throw a car the way 11 does. So all that foreshadowing paid off, but why Will? Why was Will chosen as the one that would be the closest to Vecna and not 11? Well, we already know the parallels of 11 and Henry Creel. They're both experiments and natural-born psychics due to the experiments. But character-wise, we're starting to see that Henry Creel is actually more similar to Will. In the brief amount of backstory we saw of Henry as a child, we can see he is kind of a sensitive boy who doesn't really fit into his family or his town. He sees there's something fundamentally wrong with the world and the people in it. And Will is also seen as quite sensitive. He's framed as kind of this out-of-place bullied so-called zombie boy, more interested in art and D&D than what everyone else is interested in. And not only that, but he's also quietly struggling with his sexuality. It's kind of like that Harry Potter to Voldemort or Tom Riddle comparison. They're actually very similar. They have like this psychic connection between them. But they're also quite similar, yet they end up acting on it so differently. Because obviously Henry takes that pain that he suffered as a child and concludes that humanity is the problem. So he's kind of reshaping the world as he sees fit. Whereas Will still has his loved ones. He has his brother and his mom and his friends. Vecna says in season 5, in the last episode, that he chose children because they're weaker and they're easily broken and easily reshaped. And I think that's exactly what he saw when he saw Will. In fact, he probably just saw a younger version of himself in Will. And I really think that Will has one of the coolest character arcs going for him into season 5. We haven't gotten much information on why Henry Creel was shaking and terrified when he saw the cave, so we're probably going to see a piece of his trauma. We know Will had a quite traumatic childhood, especially with his abusive father. Vecna basically sees Will as this exploitable, weak child. And that's kind of what he's been. Even in these first few episodes of season 5, Joyce is still babying Will. And I think this is going to be such a good character arc for Will when he finally shows that he is brave. And I think he will be extremely pivotal into defeating Vecna, which will be just so poetic. That Vecna's first experiment, and the one that he thought would be the easiest to control and have under his wing, would be the biggest thorn in his side going into the finale. So now that we've seen that a connection into Henry Creel's mind, or Vecna's mind, whatever you want to call him, can grant Will powers, I'm interested in just seeing whether you guys think Max and Holly, and maybe even some of the other kids, might be able to use powers or psychic powers. Let me know what you think. Do you think that Max and Holly will get powers in the finale of Stranger Things? Let me know in the comments. But anyways, thank you for watching and have a nice day.